Good afternoon. It's fast approaching 24 minutes past 5 o'clock. This is GB News. We are the People's Channel. I'm Nana Akua. Right now, though, it's time for our Great British Debate this hour. And I'm asking, is it time to put the brakes on net zero? Now, a study published in the International Journal of Industrial Organisation has revealed that wind farm companies exaggerate the amount of energy they expect to produce. Plus, there's a lot of things going on within those farms with regard to those subsidies as well. And all of this comes as Prime Minister Rishi Sunak has pledged that he won't be taking a hair shirt approach to handling net zero, stating that it must be used in a way that benefits jobs. Now, this comes as electric cars are having to be powered up via generators as the charging point rollout has been slowed. So what do you think? Has net zero run its course? We've even got the situation where they're worried about the grid with regard to gas boilers as well. So for the Great British Debate this hour, I'm asking, is it time just to put the brakes on the whole thing? Joining me, Suzanne Evans, journalist and political commentator, Matthew Stadlen, writer and broadcaster. I've got you as a writer, you're not, Peter. Peter Edwards, former editor of the Labour List, and Lois Perry, director of CAR26. Right, well, I think I've got to start with somebody who's quite feisty. I'll go with Lois Perry. Lois, is it time to put the brakes on net zero?
Oh, well, completely, absolutely. And Rishi Sunak, it was a little bit disingenuous what he actually said with regards to the hair shirt comment, because he also said, I completely believe in net zero and its aim. So, and with this legislation that was voted through Parliament the other night, where you could be criminalised, actually be imprisoned, for not meeting net zero standards with your property, this is going too far. And I think the public is seeing that this is absolutely nothing to do with being green and everything to do with control and anti-capitalism.
Matthew Stadlen.
Well, no, that's just conspiracy theory nonsense, I'm afraid, from Lois.
In what way?
Sorry, it's not.
Because science is telling us, in its overwhelming majority, that if we don't reach net zero collectively as a world by about 2050, then we're going to exceed the rise of 1.5 degrees. And if we do that, you get much more major flooding likely, you get much hotter weather, you get problems with food supply. If we don't do something now, and by the way, I agree with Sunak, we should do it in a way that makes economic sense, and we should look after the most vulnerable in society. But if we don't do something now, in the long run, we and our families will pay a heavier price.
It'll be a bit odd, though, in a flood, what we'll do with all our electricity as the water makes contact with the electricity, if that's the way we're going. Well, it does. I mean, it doesn't sound like it's the right thing to do. Suzanne Evans.
I find it quite incredible that it's at the height, I think, of egotistical megalomania that politicians think they can reduce the Earth's temperature by 1.5 degrees when they can't even fill potholes in the roads. I mean, this is insane. Let's be honest. If you think the current cost of living crisis is a disaster, you ain't seen nothing yet. Net zero ultimately is going to make us all poorer and colder. This has not been thought through. The technology is not in place yet to be able to replace oil and gas boilers. And as Lois rightly said, they're having to push this so hard. It's such a fake agenda that they're having to criminalise people who don't comply. It is beyond insane. And frankly, any party that wants to win the next election has got to start looking at how this is going to impact ordinary people. And it is ordinary people, not the elites, not the wealthy. They'll still be able to do what they like Prince Harry yesterday, who turned up to the opening ceremony of the Invictus Games in her private helicopter. He preaches net zero. They all preach net zero. They don't live by it.
Peter Edwards.
There is a consensus, and you wouldn't always get that from listening to this debate, but net zero policies are popular. Ipsos Mori did some polling in November last year, so we're well into the cost of living crisis by last November. It showed a lot of net zero policies were popular, and they continue to be so, even when taking into account the personal financial impact. To give one example, levies on frequent flying. And I think that's quite an uncontroversial one to put on the table, because I think most of us, although we've got different starting points, we'd all accept flying is bad for the environment, and a lot of us too much of it. So I think we can disagree or agree on the principle, but to just point fingers saying it's elites trying to control us is not really engaging with. Really engaging with the environmental points that Matthew made, or the fact that there is public support. And the two parties that can win the general election, Labour and the Tories, both support it.
There isn't public support.
Yeah.
Matthew Goodwin's done some polling just this week. He says only 16% of the British population support a net zero policy agenda. The politicians have forced this onto people. There has been no scrutiny. Nobody can tell us how much it's going to cost. Nanny, you mentioned the decommissioning of the gas grid. We do know that's going to cost because of a leaked document from Parliament. That's going to cost at least £65 billion. That's £2,300 for every household in this country. I repeat, this policy has been pushed through without scrutiny.
I totally agree with you, Susan. Can I just make the point as well that our recent polling that was done with YouGov showed that 62% of those that expressed an opinion, YouGov polling, wanted a net zero referendum. And also, so that completely contradicted the points about there being public support. And also, I just read a very interesting statistic. Just 2 days ago, only 0.25% of energy used in the United Kingdom come from wind farms. You know, 0.2.
Matthew Stadler.
This isn't a smooth process, right? So
You're not wrong.
I'm someone who loves. I'm someone who loves nature. I'm a bird watcher. I'm a bird photographer.
Well, then you won't like wind farms,
and
will
I'm
you?
not a fan of wind farms. I think they're incredibly ugly. But somewhere along the line, sacrifices have to be made in order for us to reach our target. If we don't reach our target, we can't lead the world. By the way, a lot of people say, well, what's the point because China aren't doing anything? China actually have signed up to net zero by 2060. It's not ideal. They should be going quicker. They should be doing
Why
more.
should they
but
be
they
going...
are involved. Because if we don't, I come back to the point.
No. I'm saying, why should they be going quicker? That you just said they should be going quicker.
Because if they don't go quicker, then the whole world, we as a species, suffer. If we don't reach net zero, if we believe the science, you could be anti-science, you could be conspiracy theorist if you want, but if you believe the majority of the science and you're not anti-science, then if we don't keep temperatures below 1.5 degrees, we are in big trouble as a species.
Big trouble as a species, Lois. That's what he's saying. Big trouble.
Yeah, absolutely. Do you know what? There's something that's happened since the Industrial Revolution, and that is that you and I, Nana, are not currently dead, right? Because just before the Industrial Revolution, the life expectancy was 45, right? Okay. So, and now it's 40 and now it's 80 because there's been nothing better for humanity than fossil fuels, and it enables us to mitigate any weather changing events or anything, which is all completely natural, by the way.
What happens when they run out, Lois?
What happens when they run out? Will they get something else then? But they haven't run out, so why leave?
The point is, at the moment, fossil fuels are the most effective form of energy we've got. The technology is not yet there to force through net zero. If the technology was there, I would be backing it because I too want to protect the environment. But the fact is, it isn't there. It's too fast, too quickly. Haven't got the... And to say that we will be falling behind and not leading the world, what? On making citizens poorer and colder.
No, we're definitely ahead on that one.
Government is not saying that this government, and this is the first major economy, our government, and I think it's one thing to be proud of in this government. I'm very anti this Conservative government. It was the first major economy to sign into law our net zero pledges, and they have not said that we must give up oil and gas immediately. It's phasing it out. Yes, it deserves scrutiny. That's what happens in a democracy. But if we follow the science, we have to act.
Well, you say it happens in a democracy, but this latest bill they've pushed through is pretty undemocratic.
But hold on, have we got time to talk briefly? You know, the idea that a government is elected by the people in a free and fair general election, and then they win a vote in the House of Commons, and we say that's undemocratic is a nonsense. I'm Labour.
No,
I don't support...
I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about the content within that bill, as Lois will point out.
It's a bill by a democratically elected government. There's lots of things the Tories do I don't like. But they did win the last election.
But ministers will be able to sort of change the laws without going through scrutiny, which is the problem with the bill.
But then the answer to that is through parliamentary democracy in the ballot box. It's not through Lois-type arguments about control. That's not the case for it. We do have a voice in this process.
Listen, I'm going to give the last word to Lois because you said Lois-type arguments. You've got 10 seconds, Lois.
When you have a situation where all of the main parties are all globalist and all have exactly the same policies, how exactly are you able to vote them out? You tell me that.
I think you have to find a party that doesn't agree with them. So let's see. OK, so what do you think then? Net zero, yes or no? What do you think? Should we need to put the brakes on it, Suzanne?
Yes, absolutely.
Matthew Stadlen?
Vote for Lois.
Matthew Stadlen, yes or no?
No, we should not put the brakes on. No.
Peter Edwards?
I support net zero, but more importantly, it is going to stay.
Should we put the brakes on, yes or no?
No.
And Lois Perry?
100 million%.
What, yes or no? Yes, put the brakes on. Absolutely. All right, listen, thank you so much to Lois, Carrie, Suzanne Evans, Matthew Stadlin, Elsa Peter Edwards. Really good to talk to you. Wow, what are your thoughts? Get in touch. gbviews@gbnews.com. Should we put the brakes on net zero? I'm Nana Akua. We're live on TV, online and on digital radio. On the way, the Great British Debate. I'll be asking you that question. Joining me, Christine Hamilton and also Danny Kelly. But first, let's get your news with Polly Middlehurst.